Okay, so now that we know kind of the hand positions and what speed we're gonna be centering at, let's actually start to center. One of the first things we need to do is we're gonna make sure that this clay is kind of pushed down in the center of our wheel. And then we're gonna make sure that it's wet, right? We need to keep our clay whenever we work on it with the wheel. We need to make sure it's wet or shiny like it is now. You'll see that throughout the course of these videos, I'm gonna be adding water as I need it. Okay? And you should be doing the same. If you ever feel it sticking or drying out in your hands, simply add a little bit more water. Okay? I'm gonna get my hands in that position. I'm going to get my wheel speed up to about a 7, like I said. And my first action is always gonna be to use my right hand here and push down with my right hand, okay, to help this piece of clay get stuck to the wheel, okay? If we start initially with putting pressure from the side, odds are that that clay is gonna pop off, and we don't want that, okay? You can already see I need to add a little bit more water, okay? Now the idea behind centering is that I'm gonna be using counter pressure. So I'm gonna be putting pressure from the side with my left hand and pressure from the top with my right hand, eventually at the same time to get this clay centered in the middle of the wheel. Now what I first like to do is just practice actually moving the clay. So what I like to do is with my elbow tucked, I'm gonna lean in with my left hand, and you can see that that clay starts to cone and move up, right? If I'm pushing with my left, the only place for it to go is to move up. Okay. Now with that, I'm gonna also practice putting more pressure from the top, and you can see that that clay starts to flatten and move down. Okay. I'm gonna repeat that about 5 or 6 times, putting more pressure from the left to bring it up, more pressure from the top hand to bring it down, okay? This is actually doing one of two things. It's actually wedging the clay for us even more than what we already did. It's also actually helping this clay get centered before we even really try to center it, okay? So you can see I'm leaning in to put pressure from the left, and I'm pushing down from the top to flatten it out. Now a big mistake students make is that with this left hand, as they lean in, that elbow pops out of their hip, and then your arms and hands kind of do this, and they kind of ride the clay and kind of go all over, right? We can't let this 1.5 pound piece of clay be stronger than you. So we need to make sure that left elbow is in your hip as we push up, and then as we push down. Okay. The last thing I'll talk about that is that it's never just pressure from the side to bring it up or pressure from the top to bring it down. It's always a little bit of both. I'm always putting a little pressure from the top as I put more pressure from the side, and then vice versa. More pressure from the top and still a little pressure from the side. Once I've gone up and down about 5 or 6 times, we're gonna actually try to center this piece of clay. Our goal is this piece of clay is to look like a hockey puck, okay? So a little bit wider than it is tall, and we know that this piece of clay will be centered when it's not moving, okay? You can see right now, there's a little bit of a wobble to this piece of clay. We know it's centered when we look down as it's spinning and it's not moving, okay? So I'm gonna pick here, I've gone up and down about 5 or 6 times. Now I'm gonna put even pressure from the side and from the top, shooting for that hockey puck shape, okay, until I can feel that that clay is not moving in my hands. If I'm like this and I can see my hands kind of moving or the clay moving, I know it's not centered, okay? But if I lean in and do that counter pressure here, you can start to see that that clay kind of stops. Once it stops, and when I say stops, I mean stops wobbling, we're gonna slowly take our hands off the wheel, okay? I'm gonna talk just a little bit about if we're centering on the wheel and we get it centered and it's not moving, and we pop our hands off the wheel really quickly, it's always gonna wobble. So we need to make sure that we gently get our hands on the clay. And once we feel it centered, we gently take our hands off the clay so that we have a centered piece of clay.